Prime Minister has suggested he's going to pull out of the European Court of Human Rights if it stands in the way of his Rwanda migration scheme.
Yes, Rishi Sunak said that controlling illegal immigration is more important than membership of the legal body, and he would not let a foreign court interfere in sovereign affairs.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's in Westminster for us this morning. It's long been called for, certainly by a significant number of Tory MPs. Is the PM going to acquiesce?
Well, it's sounding very much like he will, if necessary. Bear in mind that the Safety of Rwanda bill is still going through Parliament. It's faced a huge battle to go through the House of Lords. But when it becomes law, it's likely to be challenged by the courts. Now, Rishi Sunak is determined to finally get people on flights to Rwanda some 2 years after this scheme was announced. If it is blocked by the courts in Europe again, he has heavily suggested now that he will promise to pull Britain out of the ECHR. That is the nuclear option. Now, plenty on the right have been calling for this for a long time, people like the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, being just one of them. Plenty of voters on the right would be very happy to see this. But, of course, it will alienate potentially many of his sort of One Nation, more moderate wing. It may alienate also a lot of potential Conservative voters. And also the government in Kigali, in Rwanda itself, said that it would have no part in this deal if it was not going to comply with international law. So let's see. It could, of course, be called as one of the pledges that Rishi Sunak might make in going to the polls and fighting the next election, whenever that may be. Some speculation that that could be in the early summer.
Well, meanwhile, Catherine, the Tories are on course for a worse general election result than Sir John Major's in 1997. That's according to a new poll out this morning.
Yes, another day, another poll, and disastrous reading for the Conservatives. Again, it suggests from this very extensive poll of 19,000 people that if the election happened today, we'd be looking at effectively the 1997 style wipeout for the Conservatives. In fact, even worse, saying the Conservatives would get 155 seats. They got 165 even when Tony Blair swept to power. Reform would get 12% of the vote. They wouldn't get any seats, but they would prevent dozens of Conservative seats being held or won by the Tories. And the Lib Dems also on 12%, but they would do rather better by this model, looking to come out with 49. Now, it's 4 years today since Sir Keir Starmer was elected leader of Labour. At the time, because they'd had such a disastrous showing in 2019, it was thought that he would basically be a sort of caretaker leader, that he'd be there for some time before handing on to somebody else, that it would take 10 years or more to get Labour back into a position where they could be elected. My goodness, how things have changed. I've taken a look back at his first 4 years in charge of the Labour Party. Let's have a look at that now.
A changed Labour Party on the march, on your side, return to the service of working people.
Things can always change, and fast. But current polling predicts a huge Labour majority. How times change. 4 years ago, Starmer took over a Labour Party smarting from its worst defeat since 1935.
Cumulatively, we lost the trust of the public in the Labour Party as a force for good and a force for change. And we've lost 4 general elections.
Despite calls for a first female leader, the party plumped for another man from North London. On a platform of 10 left-wing pledges, making, he said, the moral case for socialism. Few of those pledges remain intact, but Baroness Jenny Chapman, who was Starmer's political secretary, explains.
So things that he said 4 years ago, before we left the European Union, before COVID, before the financial crisis that Liz Truss plunged us into as a country before our mortgages all went through the roof. Things you could say then, you know, it's just not pragmatic or realistic to say the exact same things now.
Starmer's determination to root out the anti-Semitism that had surged under Corbyn led to a zero-tolerance approach and quickly high-profile figures being sacked or losing the whip, including the former leader himself. Changing the party hasn't been easy. When Labour lost the Hartlepool by-election to the Tories in May 2021, Starmer came close to resigning. The ensuing reshuffle aimed to clip the wings of Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, but ended with her gaining a whole host of titles. But weeks later, the Partygate scandal began to break, and Labour passed the Tories in the polls.
Boozy parties in Downing Street. Yes. Is he now going to do the decent thing and resign?
As the Conservatives have swapped one Prime Minister for another and another, against a backdrop of high taxes and stretched public services, the Labour lead has only grown. Here's Scarlett Maguire, pollster at JL Partners.
And one thing that Keir Starmer has managed to do is make himself and the party look like a safe option again, especially around issues like immigration and the economy.
And his numerous U-turns on policy have been seized on by the Tories.
Now he seems to be opposing that policy. It's only Wednesday. I know he flip-flops, but even for him it's pretty quick.
The war in Gaza has led to rebellions and the humiliation of George Galloway winning Rochdale. But Starmer is focused on acting like a Prime Minister in waiting.
We actually recently asked voters to describe Keir Starmer in a single word, and the most commonly used words were weak, boring, unsure. People also use words like honest and competent and leader. And I think one thing that we hear more and more from people is that actually the more they see of him, at least they think he might be a little bit more normal than Rishi Sunak. Something we hear a lot. We don't know what Keir Starmer stands for. We're not sure what the Labour Party stands for, but they must be better than what we've just had for the last 14 years, so we're going to give them a go.
In just 4 years, Sir Keir Starmer has dragged the Labour Party back towards the centre and to the edge of power. Catherine Forster, GBNews. So Scarlett Maguire there saying that voters consider Labour to be the least bad option, hardly a ringing endorsement. But I think it is worth saying what a huge achievement it is that Sir Keir Starmer has dragged Labour from this horrendous result back in 2019 to a position where it's now expected that he's going to get a huge majority. And you know, it's easy perhaps to underestimate him because of the chaos within the Conservatives, but he is quite ruthless. He does want to win and he is going to do whatever that takes. It does look very much at the moment like he's going to be our next Prime Minister.